You want to say anything to kick us off?
I just want to welcome. So Anika is a mindset coach. If you haven't already guessed, we're excited to have her on board for you guys to help you open up your minds to different ideas and different exploration of things that she's going to discuss with you. And so welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Quick background on me. I'm originally from Canada, from the west coast of Canada, but I live in Ireland now. And my background is in sport and exercise psychology. And so I work with a huge range of people across athletes, coaches, personal trainers, individuals like yourself, working with health and fitness challenges and goals. And then also in the corporate world, basically applying mindset and psychology and mental skills principles to all of those different contexts. And I'm so excited to be here today talking to you about mindset. It's one of my favorite topics, and I hope you will walk away from this hour with a real sense of some tangible tools and techniques that you can take with you into your life and start feeling a difference quite quickly. So I really want to invite you guys to just really gift yourself the next 60 minutes and focus in. The more you invest in this hour, the more you're going to get out of it. There's going to be lots of opportunities for questions and interactions through some fun, anonymous, interactive slides. So the more you can dive in and be really present and offer your ideas, the more you're going to walk away from. So gift yourself this time and let's have a little bit of fun together. So I'm going to pull up some slides here to keep us on track. And we'll be popping in and out of the slides. And like I said, popping in and out of some interactive slides as well as we go. Okay, so building a powerful mindset. And really at the end of the day, for anyone who is looking to set goals for themselves, take on challenges, move themselves forward through their lives, grow and learn new things, anyone who has that on their agenda or who really wants that to be part of their life is going to benefit from getting a deeper understanding of how mindset plays into our success. It's going to help. It's one of the key factors that allows us to make consistent progress, allows us to actually meet those goals that we set for ourselves, and manage the challenges and the struggles that we inevitably meet along the way. And this is going to be applicable to all areas of life. We'll probably be using a lot of examples from health and fitness today, but feel free to bring in examples and ideas from how this might apply in work and family and all other areas as well. Okay, so I can say quite confidently that everybody here, myself included, and really like every human on the planet right now has some kind of a belief that is actively holding them back from fulfilling their full potential or growing as much as they could. And so we're not used to giving something like a belief this much credit or this much emphasis because we don't tend to think of beliefs as having that much power. But hopefully by the end of this hour, you're going to have a strong sense of how beliefs do have a huge amount of power over us. They have a huge influence on how we see ourselves, how we see the world, and importantly, how we react and respond to challenges. So I'm hoping that by the end of this hour too, you guys will have a better sense of what beliefs you have that might be holding you back, and importantly, how to shift those beliefs so that those beliefs are working with you and supporting you towards reaching your goals and being the person you're working towards being, instead of blocking you or holding you back. So quickly, we're going to look at what a belief is because beliefs are the foundation of a mindset. So to understand mindset, we have to understand beliefs. We're going to look at how beliefs and mindsets impact our success. And then lastly, and possibly most importantly, once we're aware of all this, once we have the information, how do we change? How do we actually take ourselves from an unhelpful mindset into a helpful mindset? And how do we use that as sort of a daily practice to help ourselves continuously grow and improve? So to start out here, I want you to imagine beliefs like they are a set of glasses. And the reason I say that is because beliefs very much influence the way that we see the world, the perspective that we have on ourselves, on the way the world works, on other people, what is right, what is wrong, what should happen, what shouldn't happen. All of these concepts and these perspectives and ideas that we have are very much shaped by our belief. And beliefs start as ideas very young and very early on in our lives, and they're reinforced through experience as we grow older. And generally speaking, by the time we get to our age where we're adults and we've lived a while, we have a very clear set of beliefs, whether or not we're specifically aware of them. We're sort of looking at the world through one particular set of glasses. So what I want to suggest to you guys is that it's actually possible to take off those glasses and try on a different set of beliefs, or put on a different set of glasses. And in doing so, we can actually fundamentally shift how we see ourselves, how we see the world, how we perceive even what's right or wrong, or all of those different elements that make up our reality. So although our reality and how we see the world can seem quite fixed and can seem like it can only be one way, hopefully by the end of this hour, you're going to see that actually there's a lot more wiggle room there than we might realize. There's a lot to work with here, and we have a lot more control than we may initially recognize. So this quote kind of brings this to life nicely for us. So beliefs tend to be subconscious. Beliefs exist in our subconscious mind, which means we're just not really aware of them or the influence that they have over us day to day. When you add beliefs together, you create a mindset or a perception. And your perceptions have everything then to do with the choices you make, the behaviors you exhibit, the relationships you choose, and the very realities you create. So let's bring this to life a little bit with an example. So let's imagine that we have an individual who early on in life gets the idea that they are not athletic. And this person may get this idea from a number of places. They may struggle in gym. They may get really unhelpful feedback from a PE coach or a sports coach early on in life. They may never get picked for the teams. It may seem to them that they're not as fast or as strong or as flexible as their peers around them. And these ideas, as they get reinforced by experience again and again, is going to start forming a belief for this person that, like, I'm just not an athletic person. This is not for me. This is not where I shine. I'm good at other things, but sports, athletics, no, not for me. Once this person has formed that belief or that perception, that is going to directly influence their choices. All of a sudden, if they're given the opportunity to join in with like an after school or an after work sports team, of course they're not going to do that. They're not an athletic person. Why would they decide to engage in a sports activity? They're going to make choices that pull them towards other activities, things that they feel more competent in. It's going to influence their relationships. They're going to be more likely to connect with people who also share this kind of idea that, yeah, no, sports isn't for me, athletics isn't for me. And that's going to shape their connections and their relationships through their life. And so through this trickle-down effect, this idea, this thing that started as an idea and then formed up into a belief through experience, is now actually really influencing that person's reality. They're living in a reality where they're just not athletic. Sports is not their thing. They're good at other things, but I'm not going to engage in that. So we have to ask ourselves, could that have turned out differently if that idea was challenged early on in that person's life? What if that person actually ended up getting a really amazing coach who pushed them to work through the fact that they didn't feel as fast, who somehow gave them the belief the idea that they could be good at sport? And how might that idea have shaped their beliefs differently, and then their choices and their relationships and their realities? So we can see that these beliefs, even though they start as small ideas, strengthen and can have a huge, huge impact on all sorts of different areas of our lives. And this gentleman here, Dr. Joe Dispenza, is actually a brilliant resource for information on mindset. So if you guys are digging around after this, I can definitely recommend him as a source of information. Okay. So now we have a better sense of like where these beliefs come from, how they start as an idea, how they kind of trickle down and affect our lives. What's really fascinating to realize is that the majority of human suffering actually comes from irrational beliefs. And so what I mean by that is the stress, the anxiety we experience, the frustration, the negative emotions, usually are reactions to beliefs or perspectives that are not actually grounded in reality. So, and there's some common irrational beliefs that we hold, lots of people hold, that we hold across like cultures and across thousands of individuals. So I'm going to list off a few of these beliefs here as examples for you. And I want you guys to look at each belief and think, okay, is this a belief that has affected me, either in the past or right now? And if you resonate with that belief, or you feel like that may have influenced you in some way, I want you to put the number in the chat room for me. So for example, we have belief number 1 here, which is, I must do well and get the approval of everybody who matters to me, or I will be a worthless person. And I can say right off the bat that this is something, when I read this for the first time, I was like, oh my goodness, yeah, that is something that has absolutely shaped my choices and my actions and my reactions for a long time through my life. And actually, yeah, that has caused me a lot of suffering, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry when I felt that maybe people didn't approve of me. Okay. Number 2, I must have an easy, enjoyable life, or I cannot enjoy living at all. So this is this idea that if things aren't fun and good and easy all the time, then life sort of isn't good. Things aren't okay. I'm not going to be able to manage that. That somehow when I'm struggling, that's a sign that my life is going wrong or something bad is happening here. Okay, number 3, I must be a high achiever or I will be worthless. Number 4, when things are tough and I'm under pressure, I must be miserable and there's nothing I can do about this. So this idea that this is the only logical reaction to things being hard is that I need to get upset about it. And there's really no alternative. That's just the way I should react. Okay, so go ahead and pop into the chat, guys. I'm going to have one more here. The idea that my past is the most important part of my life and it will keep on dictating how I feel and what I do. So if I've always been an anxious person, I will always be an anxious person. And there's not much that I can do about that. I'm sort of defined by my past, as opposed to feeling like, okay, yeah, I've been a certain way in the past, but I have the ability to change that. Okay. So what do you guys think? Do any of these resonate with you? And just pop the number of the belief into the chat. Yeah, number 1. Yeah, again, totally agree with that, Shane. For me too, I know number 3 has been a difficult one for me through my life. Yeah, 1 and 3. Oops. Okay. And number 5 as well for me. To be honest, they all resonate with me. I can think of ways that they've all influenced me at different points in my life. But some of them may sort of stand out more for other people. Yeah, 1, 3, and 5, 3. Yeah, 1 and 3. Yeah. So we can see, like, even with like the tiny little cross section of humanity that we have here today, that these beliefs are really resonating. And these are the beliefs that are, you know, they come from culture, society, expectations, all sorts of things that we sort of pick up as we grow up. And they can be very, very powerful sources of suffering for us. We need to recognize that actually these beliefs are not grounded in truth, even though they can feel really true at the moment. And so understanding mindset it gives us a skill set that allows us to start challenging these beliefs and recognizing them as not being 100% true and finding other truths and other perspectives on those beliefs. Brilliant. Okay, thanks for sharing those, guys. Okay. So we need to understand how beliefs connect through to our thoughts, because as I said, beliefs live in our subconscious mind, generally speaking, until we start paying more attention to them. We're not really aware of them. But what we are aware of are the thoughts that we have that are connected to those beliefs. So if we go back to our original example of our person who early on in life decided, I got this idea that they weren't athletic. That forms a core belief for that person that they're not athletic, they're not sporty, that's not who they are. Intermediate beliefs kind of grow from that. So if I have that core belief, I might say, okay, well, if I'm not athletic, then I'm not good at sports. If I'm not athletic, then I can't be fit. If I'm not athletic, then I'm sort of destined potentially to be overweight. Okay. Those intermediate beliefs then bleed into the thoughts, the core beliefs and the intermediate beliefs bleed into the thoughts that we are more aware of. And so the thoughts around that might be, there's no point in trying, this is too hard, I can't do this, I hate this, I don't want to do it, or whole thousands and thousands of variations of thoughts that come from those beliefs. So another example is that if we have the core belief, I'm not good enough. And I have to tell you guys that this is something I see so commonly in my work. And I think it's something that a lot of us can really resonate, this belief, this fear that maybe we're just not good enough. And we can become so good at finding evidence to support this belief when we have it. So this core belief that I'm not good enough might lead to the intermediate belief of, well, if I'm not good enough, then there's no way I can change who I am. I'm stuck as I am, okay? And that belief might give rise to this type of thought that there's no point in trying to eat healthy because I'm going to fail at it. I can't change myself because I'm not good enough. So although we are aware of that thought very commonly, we are less so aware of the beliefs that it has grown from. Okay, and I say grown from because I really like to use this analogy of thoughts growing from beliefs. So if we imagine that a belief is like a bulb that's planted within us and it is going to grow certain types of thoughts. So the belief bulb, I'm not good enough, is going to grow the types of thoughts that say, I'm going to fail when things get hard. But if we have a different type of belief bulb, that is going to grow different types of thoughts, something like, I will find a way when things get hard. Okay. And part of the problem is that we spend a lot of time trying to deal with the thought or the plant. We cut back the plant, we cut back the thought over and over again. But we don't get to the root of the problem, which is the belief itself. And that belief is going to just keep growing that thought over and over again if we don't get to the root of the problem and address and shift that belief. Okay. So part of the reason this is so important to start getting our heads around is that identity is a cognitive shortcut. Our beliefs form our identities. So our example earlier of our individual who believed that they weren't good at sports, they're not athletic, they see that as part of the identity. I'm not an athletic person. I'm not a sporty person. Probably comes into how they think about themselves, how they even describe themselves to other people, okay? That identity serves as like a cognitive shortcut that streamlines our decision making. When that individual is faced with the choice, join the after work soccer team versus join the after work book club, the choice is going to be super obvious because for that individual, they're not an athletic person. So why the heck would they choose to join a sports team? Okay. So when our identity clashes with the change that we're looking to make, we can get ourselves into some trouble. And recognizing whether or not the identity is aligned with the change or clashing with the change is a great first step towards shifting that identity. Because we can, in fact, shift the identity in the same way that we can shift the beliefs. And if we can, so say that person now has the goal to be healthier, that person may need to shift their identity away from being the person who isn't athletic to, okay, I'm actually learning to be athletic. I'm somebody who's learning to be athletic. And that identity is going to have an easier time choosing to take on the challenge of joining the after work sports team or whatever it is for that person that is going to help them move towards that goal. So we can use a shift in identity to help us make different decisions by creating a new shortcut in our mind. Okay, so over to you guys here for a little bit of reflection. So I want you to imagine that all of the thoughts that we're having that are growing from our beliefs over time have accumulated throughout your life and formed a bit of a story that you've been telling yourself about yourself. And I want you to think, I'm the protagonist of that story, what have my challenges been? What are the repeated things that I seem to just keep coming up against that I can't get past, that seem to be defining who I am in a really unhelpful, negative way? Okay, what's your story around challenges? So have a think, guys, and jot down a few notes for yourself. What are the really like reoccurring themes of this story? And you can consider too, like, what are my successes? What are the successes in this story? What are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? Okay. So have a little think about that. And next up, we're going to move into our first interactive slide, which is the answers you put in there are going to be completely anonymous. And we're going to use that as a way to get a sense of what these stories may have been for everybody. Okay. So as this is coming to you in your mind, and maybe you're taking a few notes, what I'd love for everybody to do is to open a new browser tab, or you can do it on your phone as well, and go to menti.com. And when you get there, it'll ask you to put in a code. So here's the code here, 6750148. And you'll see a question there, and there'll be an opportunity to answer that question and then submit. Once again, these answers are totally anonymous, so please feel free to really speak your mind. I'm going to just close this for a moment. That code will come back in just a second, so don't worry if you haven't gotten it down yet. What I'm going to do here is just open up our Menti screen so that we can actually see everybody's answers coming in. So you'll see at the top here, menti.com and the code 6750148. So I want you to think, what story in particular from the story that you've been just gotten familiar with in your head has been preventing you from making the changes you want to make? Is it the story that I'm not good enough, that I'm not going to be able to do it, that I don't have enough time, that people are going to judge me for making that change? Okay. What is the story that has been the loudest for you, do you think, in preventing that change? Yeah, I'm never good enough. And I think that this is such a common one, as I've said, across people, one that everyone can resonate with, that it's you just don't have it in you, right? This idea, I'm thick, I'm not clever enough. Okay, yeah. So feeling like not good enough, that I don't have the intelligence to do it. A fear of failure, yeah. So feeling like it's just not possible, or that if the failure was to happen, that would be too great, that we couldn't manage that experience. Okay, that I'm going to fail again. Yeah, so we failed in the past, and maybe that was really difficult, and that this story is going to, it means that you're destined to fail again, that the same experience will crop up again and I will fail. Yeah, absolutely. I don't like the feeling that I'm not naturally good at something. Okay, yeah. So we're going to talk about that in a moment. This idea of this sense of, okay, is it natural, or is it something we can develop? Okay, brilliant. So as you can see, guys, like, again, we're a small little cross section of people here, but we have a lot of commonalities in the things that are holding us back, the stories that we're telling ourselves that are holding us back. Try different methods at losing weight, but nothing works. Yeah, like, I'm not capable, this isn't working. Maybe if all these methods aren't working, it's something to do with me, right? I'm the problem. Yeah, so I want you guys to look at these stories and recognize that if someone else was telling you this story about themselves, that you cared about, you would likely challenge them on this story, and you would see that it is not fully true. It's a lot harder to do this for ourselves. It's a lot harder to challenge ourselves on our own stories. And this is why becoming aware of our mindsets and developing some skills around mindset is so important. We have to be able to challenge these stories. These stories are a big pack of lies, but they feel so true to us that they actively influence us and hold us back. Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm selfish because I want to do this. So a sense of guilt around taking the time for yourself to make the change or whatever it is you're working towards. Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for sharing those. And we'll come back to this Menti in a little bit here. But for now, I'm going to pop us back over to our slides. So yeah, like, just let's reflect on that for a sec. Like, there's a real commonality of experience there. There's a real commonality of not feeling capable, not feeling strong enough, not feeling good enough, feeling like we shouldn't. Okay. Okay, so let's move into an understanding of our mindsets now. And this is where we're going to start seeing how all of these stories relate to our success, and how we can recognize these two mindsets within us that are really important mindsets to be aware of, and how we can use this now to start making some changes in these stories and take back more control over this process. So like we said before, a mindset is a collection of beliefs around a certain area, okay? So a growth mindset comes from the belief that your talent and your abilities are something that are continuously developing, and that they always have the capacity to change and grow. So whatever you start with in terms of genetics and natural talent is just a starting point. You can go so far from there with effort and strategy and persistence, okay? And what's really interesting is that the research shows that there's a huge connection between people who hold this mindset about their ability and sort of general success and long-term success across our lives, okay? The flip side to this, the counter mindset, is a fixed mindset. And the root of this mindset is the idea that we believe that our abilities and talents that we currently have, what we're born with, what is kind of defined by our genes and our circumstance, is it. There's no chance of developing that further, okay? So I'm either born intelligent or I'm not. I'm either born athletic or I'm not. And if I don't have that natural talent, there's probably no point in working at it because I'm never going to really be that good at it. Okay. So where this gets really, really interesting is how these two mindsets then impact on how we face up to challenges and difficult things and opportunities for growth. So if we're coming from this growth mindset, we often see failure as a learning opportunity. We see failure as, it may still be difficult, we may not like failure, but we recognize that every failure has an opportunity to learn something important that is going to help us improve that little bit more and get that much closer to our goal. We see effort as essential. We see that, again, whatever we come into the world with is just a starting point. To reach our goals and get good at something, we've got to apply a lot of effort. And that's the thing that really gets us to mastery of anything. We see other people as a source of inspiration from this perspective because we see that they've done it. If they've figured out how to do it, then that kind of proves that it's possible for us to do it as well. And then lastly, we see challenge as an opportunity to test our skills, find out what's not working, improve that, and go back and challenge ourselves again, learn what we need to fix and go back again. So we see it as this testing ground where we get to learn things and improve ourselves as a result of that challenge. Okay, so fixed mindset then has a very different interpretation of these same four things. From a fixed mindset, we feel incredibly defined by failure. So if we mess something up, say we start trying to learn piano and we're just absolutely god awful at it at the beginning, we're like, right, that means I'm not a good piano player. End of story. This is not for me. I'm out of here. Okay. The failure defines us and adds to our identity in some kind of inchangeable way. For this perspective, effort's a bit unappealing because if you're either a natural or you're not, then effort is really only for the people who don't have natural talent, right? If I have to try hard, it probably means that I don't have the natural ability, and therefore there's really no point. So effort is for like the losers who aren't natural talent. I don't really want to be lumped in with that, so I don't really like having to try hard. From this perspective, we see other people as quite intimidating, especially if they're sort of further along the journey of development than us. And we look at them and if we don't believe we can really change ourselves and catch up to them, then all we focus in is the distance between what they have and what we have and what they can do and what we can do. And we see that as quite intimidating and quite threatening. And lastly, then, challenges are sort of something to fear from this perspective. Because a challenge is simply an opportunity to fail and be defined by that failure in a negative way. And so it becomes quite frightening and quite scary thing to challenge yourself or be in a place where you're being challenged. Okay, so before we move on, it's really important to notice that no person is fully growth or fully fixed mindset. All of us have these two mindsets living within us all the time. We have growth mindsets about some things and we have fixed mindsets about other things. And we tend to develop fixed mindsets about the things that we have decided early on, right, that we're just not good at. But we may have growth mindsets around things that we've proven to ourselves we can develop our skills in. So I want you guys to think now, where are my growth and fixed mindsets? What are the things that I believe I can develop and improve about myself? What are the things I wouldn't be scared to face a challenge in? And then what are the things that I don't believe I can change about myself? What are the things where it feels like the fear of failure is a bit too strong, that the failure is too much of a risk? Okay. And take some notes for yourself if you can, or take note of that mentally, where those two mindsets are living for you. Okay. So we're going to dive into getting to know this fixed mindset part of us a little bit better. We need to know what that part of us is like so we can start to recognize it. So these are the beliefs that usually fuel a fixed mindset. This idea of you either have it or you don't. You're either intelligent or you're not. You're successful or you're not. You're motivated or you're not. Okay. That again, effort is really only for those who don't. And if I have to try hard, it means I don't have the natural talent, and that's not for me. Excuse me. that my interest actually declines as things get harder, because the harder it gets, the more I think, right, this isn't for me. I don't have any natural talent in this. I need to move on. It's possible to be measured as a personal test that can sort of define you. Again, if we fail that first bit of piano, we're not a good piano player. That I can feel judged by criticism, defined by flaws, and very much exposed by my mistakes. And that success or failure is pretty much influenced by luck and circumstance. It's not really something I have control over. I can't own my success and I can't own my failure, because it's all about where I was born and my genes and things that are kind of outside of my control. Okay, so before we move on from our fixed mindset, we need to dive into the heart of this, which is really, I believe, at the core of a fixed mindset sits this fear of failure. And it is something that paralyzes all of us at one point or another through our lives, this fear of failure. So what we need to do is really look at, well, what is failure exactly? So I'd love to hear from you guys in the chat. Like, if you were asked to define failure for somebody, somebody from another planet who had no concept of what failure was, how would you define it for that person or that little alien? So just pop it in the chat and let me know, like, what is a definition of failure for you? And what's interesting, if you're struggling to come up with a definition of failure, that's interesting to notice too. And this is what I recognized when I first thought about this, that actually I wasn't sure what my definition of failure was. So just give it a go. See what you come up with. Yeah, it didn't meet the intended outcome of an action. Okay, great. Letting someone down. Okay, yeah. What else, guys?
Yep.
Not reaching a goal. Okay, perfect. Yeah. What else? Any other ideas? Failure is stop trying, giving up. Okay, yeah, not succeeding in what I wanted to do or attain. A limiting belief, not achieving a goal. A limited belief, yeah, okay. Upsetting someone without noticing it, interesting, okay. Okay, interesting, yeah, okay, great guys, thanks for those. So there's lots of different ways to sort of define failure, I think. But I think at the heart of everything that you guys have just said there really ties in with the way that I see it, is that we haven't measured up to expectations in some way, whether those expectations are our own or the perceived expectations of other people. And at the heart of that, I think, is this sense of like, it hasn't gone the way we wanted it to go, or it hasn't gone the way we felt it should go, whatever that thing is, okay? As Sian says, they're not being happy with the outcome. It hasn't gone the way that we hoped or wanted or expected, okay? So I think it's quite important to define failure in those terms, because I think that we're sort of taught to fear failure from a very young age, because it sort of lives as this sort of undefined, scary thing that we're not exactly sure maybe what it means, but we're sure we don't want it, and we're sure that people who have failed things seem to have gone bad for them, and therefore we know we want to avoid it. And it creates this limiting belief and this false story that failure is bad and it should be avoided at all costs. Okay. And that is a story that we need to tackle head on if we're going to change our mindset, because that belief sits at the heart of a fixed mindset. If failure is bad and should be avoided at all costs, then we are not going to take challenges. We're not going to push ourselves. Okay. So we need to look at the impact of a fear of failure. So what's really interesting is that we see in the research that if somebody has a high interest in winning, so they're quite competitive, but they also have a high fear of failure, we get someone who loves competition, but the failure causes so much self-doubt that they get a real lower reduction in confidence anytime they fail. Anxiety over the possibility of failing results in a really serious risk aversion, a low persistence, and superficial arrogance, which basically just means we're trying so hard to pretend that we're okay, and it doesn't matter to us when we fail, that it kind of comes off sometimes as this fake ego. Okay. When we can flip that fear of failure and lower it, but keep our high interest in winning, then we get someone who loves competition, but who realizes that losing isn't the end of the world. This person is more driven towards goals and actually takes way more calculated risks, dives into the challenges way more often. They're much more persistent over time, and they're much more self-motivated because they see that the mistake or the failure is an opportunity for learning, that they're going to get something out of it, even if it's not a nice experience. And again, it's not about learning to enjoy failing or enjoy making mistakes. It's about recognizing that there's always something to learn, and that failure is not definitive. It is not catastrophic. It is not the end of the story. There is always something, there's always a next step after failure. So what's really important is that we need to change our language around how we talk about success and failure, okay? We're used to saying the sentence above here, I must succeed. And that ties back to that irrational belief, right? Like if I do not succeed, I will be worthless. I must succeed. And I cannot fail. Failure is off the table. It is not an option, okay? That belief system, that expectation is going to set us up for a lot of trouble, because we will fail inevitably. And if we expect that we cannot, every time we do, we have a crisis of negative reaction to that, okay? So I want to suggest a small change in language. I want you guys to think, right, I can succeed. We want to focus in on the possibility and the belief that the success is possible, and that we will dare to fail, that we are willing to take the risks, that we're willing to take the challenge on, make the mistake, fail a little bit, learn something, and use that as fuel to continuously improve ourselves, okay? So small changes in language can have a huge impact on our belief structures. Okay, so before we move on here, let's take a short break. Sometimes after we go through the fixed mindset stuff, everybody's like, oh no, I have a fixed mindset. I can see myself in this. And there's like a bit of a panic. So I just want to reiterate to you guys that like everybody has a fixed mindset. Every single one of us recognizes ourselves in all of those beliefs and qualities in different areas, okay? So don't panic, and remember that we're making the unconscious conscious with this. And that is really the first step towards changing this. As we can be more aware of this for ourselves, we can start to successfully shift out of this in really helpful ways. Okay, so is everybody doing okay? Thumbs up. Good? Okay, perfect. Great. So we'll dive on now into the exciting stuff, which is our growth mindset and how do we start nurturing this and building this for ourselves. Okay, so these are the beliefs that support and nurture a growth mindset, okay? The idea that there is no way of knowing the limit to my potential before I give it a try. So I have no idea, I have no way of knowing how good I'm going to be at basketball until I go and give basketball a serious go. And yeah, I may not become like Michael Jordan ever, but I believe that I can improve myself. I can become a better basketball player than I am today. And that there's just no way of knowing what the limit to my potential is until I actually go out there and find it. The efforts and strategies and plans are the things that support learning, and that is what leads to mastery. So mastery in something is not so much to do with natural talent and much more to do with the fact that we apply strategic effort. And strategic effort means it's not just trying for the sake of trying. Oh my goodness, that was a crazy motorcycle in the background there. It's the idea that we can try something and then assess whether or not it's actually working for us. And if it's not working, tweak that, shift it, try something different. So it's not just effort, but strategic effort. Then actually I'm going to get more interested as things get harder because there's more here to learn. There's more to figure out. There's more to challenge me, and I like challenge. That is totally impossible to be measured by a single test, right? That we have to actually recognize that any test is just a reflection of your ability at one point in time, and that we can always improve and build on that. That I'm not going to be afraid of mistakes. I don't have to like mistakes, but I'm going to dare to make mistakes. That I have a great love of learning. This sense of prioritizing learning and loving the work of learning something new is so much at the heart of our growth mindset. And that success is directly related to effort and ability, both of which I have control over. If I can control how much develop my ability through my effort, and I definitely have control over how much effort I put into something, then I can really own my successes and my failures and see them as a direct result of my effort and my actions, and own the successes and own the failures by learning from them and using them to fuel future success. Okay, so I'd love to hear from you guys in the chat. What do you think? What mindset, now that we've kind of outlined both in a little bit more detail, which one do you see reflected most often in the society or culture around you or in your own personal circles? Do you think it's more fixed or more growth or a balance of the two? What do you think? Okay, fixed, yeah. Fixed, okay, yeah. So a lot of people seeing a lot of fixed. And what's really interesting is to start, for even just for a little while, to start looking at the world through this kind of like mindset lens and trying to pick out, okay, where is that person's or even that organization's actions coming from a fixed mindset, and where are people's or society's actions coming from this growth? So you say a society as a whole is more fixed. Okay, yeah, more fixed than growth. But Shoshana says growth, perfect. I'd say at home fixed, my tribe certainly growth. Okay, yeah, and so we can start to see that these mindsets make up the cultures, right, of the spaces that we exhibit. So there might be a culture of growth mindset in your work, or a culture of fixed mindset. Our whole country may have a sort of overwhelming culture towards one or the other. Something I've really noticed, interestingly, and I obviously live in Ireland now, and when I talk to Irish people, a lot of Irish people perceive that there's more of a fixed mindset culture in Ireland than in countries like Canada or America. I'm not really sure if I agree or disagree with that, but that's sort of the perception. So look around and start to notice, where are these mindsets around me? And what we need to recognize is that regardless of what mindset exists around us in our work or our society or in our family, we can still really hold strong to our own growth mindset. And we do that by really getting to know these mindsets really, really well. And we're going to dive into that now. How do we do that? Okay, so I want to break this down into this idea that we have two versions of ourselves coexisting within you all the time, okay? And they sort of represent each mindset. And we need to get to know these two versions of ourselves quite well so that we could start to recognize which mindset is showing up and influencing our actions in that moment. So I'm going to share some of the characteristics of these two versions of yourself with you now to help start getting a sense of who these parts of ourselves are. Okay, so person A is our growth mindset self. So this is the part of you that loves a challenge. That's like, yes, bring it on. Let's do more challenge. I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to enjoy the struggle. Bring it on. This part of us is really uncomfortable with being uncomfortable because they recognize that discomfort is an inevitable part of learning something new. That anytime we go back and become a beginner at something again, there's going to be a level of discomfort around that. It's going to be uncomfortable learning new skills. It's going to be uncomfortable pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone, but we have to do that in order to grow and succeed. This is the part of us that's willing to take risks, right? And take that challenge and throw themselves out there. This is the part that's always looking for the learning opportunity in the failures and the mistakes and whatever it is that happens. This part of us is open to feedback because it's another great source of information about how we can actually learn and improve and fix the mistake or improve from the failure. And as we said earlier, this part of us just really loves learning and sees learning as like the key, the foundation to improvement and development of yourself. Okay, so this is our person A. Let's talk about our person B, our fixed mindset self. So this is the part of us that really just wants to keep things the way that they are. They'd rather not take the risk of trying to change. They just kind of want to stay safe in their bubble, in their comfort zone, and they don't want to push past that, okay? As a result, this is a part of us that just sort of really likes practicing what we're already good at, is because when we do things that we're already good at, we can feel really confident and talented and strong in those areas, right? And this part of us sort of dislikes having to try hard, right? It's buying into this idea that if I'm having to try hard, maybe this means I'm not good enough for this. I don't have enough natural talent, okay? And so that means I probably shouldn't do it, that I don't have a chance at this. Feels quite defined by our mistakes and our failures, as we mentioned earlier. Avoids and reacts very negatively to feedback, so that the feedback is scary and threatening. And again, you feel quite defined by that negative feedback, and so you're not really open to receiving it and using it as an opportunity to get more information. And this is really the part of us that, as opposed to loving learning, really just sort of loves looking like we have it all together, loves looking like we're really talented and we know what we're doing, okay? As opposed to being willing to throw ourselves off the edge into being a beginner again at something and having to put up with not looking at all like we have it together and figure it out, okay? So a bit of a better understanding now of who these two versions of ourselves are. And I want to highlight here that there's really nothing wrong with person B, right? Person B is not a bad person. Person B is just not really going to move through life with the same rate of acceleration and development and growth as person A. And there's moments where maybe person B helps us, right? Potentially. Maybe there's moments where we really do need to check in with whether or not we feel safe, and whether or not maybe we need to take the pedal off the gas for a minute and practice some self-care. But where we want to make sure is that person B isn't running the show, that we're not acting from this place of fear all the time, or in significant areas where we want to change. Because person A is the version that's going to accelerate and grow and improve and develop so much faster than person B. And if that's our goal for ourselves, is growth and development and challenge and learning is the goal for ourselves, then we have to figure out how to get in touch with this person A more often. So I like to summarize these two parts of ourselves with 5 words, characteristic words, okay? So version A is bold and brave, curious, trusting, and resourceful. Bold and brave because they're willing to take on the challenges. They're willing to fail. They're willing to make the mistake and go through the struggle of that, okay? Curious because we're so interested in the learning. We're always interested and curious to see, how is this going to help me? Can I learn from this? What's the lesson here? Trusting because they are able to trust in themselves and the process and recognize that you do have the ability to do this. You do have the capacity to do this, just one step at a time. Trust in the process. Trust that you can always get a little bit better. And then lastly, resourceful, because it's a part of us that's able to come back to the same problem again and again from different angles, different perspectives, and not back away from the challenge. Okay, so that's our person A. Person B is much more motivated by staying safe and staying comfortable in a very sort of fear-driven way. As a result, this part of us is avoidant of challenges and risks and scenarios that are going to push us into more accelerated growth. And as a result, this part of us is really insecure and really worried a lot of the time, insecure about what's possible, what we can actually accomplish, worried about the impact of our failures and our mistakes and things that might go wrong. Okay, so this is these are some words that summarize kind of like the essence of these two parts of ourselves. But I want you guys to think, who is person A and B for me personally? What are some words that I could add to this list that really help me personally connect in with the two versions of myself that represent these two mindsets? Okay, so see if you can bring this to life a little bit more for yourself and add in some personalized words that feel like they represent what you're like when you're being more in your growth mindset and what you're like when you're being more in your fixed mindset. Okay. So let's pop back over to our Menti here as one of our wrapping up activities. So I want everybody to pop back over to the Menti. We have a new question here. I'm just going to change our screen. I want you to think about the story that you identified earlier as the story that I was really holding. And I want you to know that that story is coming from that person B, that fixed mindset self. And I want you to think, what is the other perspective? How would my person A see that story differently or react to that challenge differently? How would they maybe see the challenge in a different light? What would their perspective be and how would that differ? Okay, so go ahead. And once again, these answers are still totally anonymous, so feel free to really speak your mind.
Tell your story differently.
So you can kind of use the words of person A as a bit of a framework here. How could I be more curious about this? How could I be more trusting of myself? How could I be more resourceful, braver, bolder? You're not that person anymore. Okay, yeah. So again, not being defined by the past, recognizing that the opportunity to change and grow is there. I love it. And the word to relate to is powerful. Cool. Just by trying shows you are good enough. Love that. That, yeah, it's not about what is there or not there. It's about the effort and the strategic effort that you bring to that process of improving. Brilliant. I can try this and I won't be afraid to fail. Yeah, I'm not going to be scared. I'm going to keep giving it a go, and I'm going to believe in the long-term benefits of that persistence and that effort. Failure is not the result. It's about learning from it. Yeah, exactly. Failure is not the end of the day. Like there's a moment after failure, and there's always a path forward from failure. Try, you will figure it out. Yeah, exactly. I love that. There's so much trust in that. Like this, we'll get there. Whatever the answers will be there when you need them. You'll find the resources you need. So give it a go. Actions are needed in order to improve. Yeah, absolutely. So if we stay still, we stay in our bubble, we stay safe, which is good sometimes. But if we want to grow, we want to improve, we want to change, we've got to get out of that bubble. We've got to move. We've got to take action. I see life as a learning opportunity and encourage others to do so. Love that. Yeah. So sort of sharing that perspective as well. Constantly ask for feedback to grow and improve. Yes. And feedback, there's a fun saying, feedback is the breakfast of champions. And I think that really is saying is that like we need the feedback, because the learning and the information we get from that feedback is what makes us champions and fuels our success. Okay. Thank you guys. Such brilliant examples there. Okay, so I'm just going to pop us back over for our last few slides here to wrap up. Okay, so how do we shift our mindsets? These are some key action steps. Once we've now recognized where our person B is speaking to us, influencing us, we know who we want to be our person A. How do we make that shift? Okay, so number one is we have to be able to recognize our mindsets. We have to be able to notice and practice noticing when those thoughts are coming from person B or coming from person A. Through noticing that, then we get the choice. Do we focus in on and invest energy in person B, or do we look at and focus in on and invest energy in person A? When you feel defined by a mistake or a failure, we have to look for the learning. Again, sometimes it's too hard in that moment to try and make it positive. That might be too much to ask of yourself, but we can always look for the lesson. And that's kind of the next step towards finding the positivity in it. If we can just find the lesson and the learning, see the next step that we can take after the failure, then that gets us one step closer to finding maybe a more positive perspective on it. Choose to surround yourself with people who challenge you to become better, who believe that you can be better, and be ready to challenge those who tell you you can't, recognizing that they are coming from a fixed mindset. Recognize too that we may not be able to change other people's minds or beliefs, but we can always choose how we react to their perspectives, and we can recognize the root of their perspective as being in a fixed mindset and choose to feel differently. Choose to wear a different pair of glasses and go, that's fine if you believe that, but I believe I can change, and that's what matters. We have to practice stretching ourselves through challenges. Practice makes perfect. So the more that we practice challenging ourselves, learning something, growing from that, the more evidence we accumulate for ourselves that actually, yeah, challenges do help me grow. Challenges do make me better. But if we never practice that, we don't get that evidence. So a great way of doing this is to start noticing what are the things that like feel a little bit uncomfortable, and how can you take little mini risks more often in your work, in your life, to kind of lean into that discomfort instead of avoiding it. Can I speak up more often at meetings? Can I, talk to my friend about that thing that she does that really hurts my feelings? Those little tiny moments of risk and discomfort and challenge are a great place to start practicing and investing in your person A. So guys, we have to remember that it comes back to our identity. If we really anchor our identity in this picture of this version of ourselves, this A version of ourselves, our growth mindset, it's going to help us create those shortcuts that starts taking the challenge, making the choice of either going for or avoiding the challenge more obvious. When we are rooted in our identity as person A, the more obvious choice is going to be to take on the challenge, take the risk, do the thing, get curious, learn from the failure. And so it's so important that we ground and choose to ground our identity in that version of ourselves and recognize that it is our choice at the end of the day, that our identity is not determined for us. Okay, so just to wrap all this up here with a bit of a summary. So beliefs create the perspective or the lens through which we see the world and create our meaning. But these beliefs can be shaped with practice, and we can take off those glasses and we can put on a different set. And it's all about recognizing the flexibility in that and recognizing that often the beliefs we've been holding on to are not serving us anymore. I want you guys to think about critically reflecting on your own thoughts and taking control of this story, these unhelpful negative stories that have been holding you back. We're so good at sort of challenging the news these days. We're quite used to the idea that just because a news story comes across our social media scroll, we don't accept it as truth right away, right? We go, okay, maybe, but like, I'm going to fact check that because, we know fake news is a big thing now. So I want you to do the same process with your own thoughts. Don't accept your thoughts immediately as truth. Challenge them, check them, fact check them, see what other perspectives are out there, see what your person A would think about the situation, and build a real habit of doing that. And then lastly, it all comes down to the practice. So we know that to change, we actually need to invest in practicing doing the thing differently for 2 to 3 months before we really start to see a change that feels then automatic. So what I mean by that is if we're really in the habit of defaulting to our person B around one specific area, maybe around our food and what we're eating, then we're going to have to really invest in 2 to 3 months of practicing relating to food differently, tapping into our person A, challenging our thoughts, building a different perspective before that starts to feel more natural and more like who we are. But if we do invest in that practice, we will get to the point where all of a sudden that new relationship with food, that new perspective on food feels natural and feels easy and automatic. But we have to prepare ourselves and invest in the idea that it's going to take a lot of time. So I want you to think about where and when you're going to do this practice. When is it going to be in the morning when you first wake up? Are you going to think about who your person A is and how you want to use that person A to move through your day? Do you want to think about it at the end of the day and reflect back over what happened to you and try to see those events through the perspective of your person A? Get specific with yourself about where and when you're going to do this practice. Get clear on what areas you want to apply this practice to. The clearer we can be and the more intentional we can be about what this practice is going to look like, the more successful we'll be. Think about too, pairing up with somebody in the program or a friend and creating a bit of an accountability buddy for yourself. You can let them know that you're doing this, that you're working on shifting your mindset around food, for example, and that you can use as a resource and a source of support when things feel difficult. All of these things are going to increase our chance of being successful. So I want to leave you guys with a final thought, which is that we choose our reality by choosing our focus. What we focus on and invest energy in shapes our reality. And so really it comes down to us to choose. Do we focus on person B and that perspective and those beliefs, or do we focus in on person A and the growth mindset beliefs that support that perspective? And whatever we focus on will grow in strength. And so make sure that you are actively and intentionally choosing and shaping your own reality by choosing what you choose to focus on. Okay, so sorry, I'm a few minutes over here, guys, but that brings us to the end of the presentation part of this in the workshop. Thank you so much for your interaction and sharing your thoughts in the mentees. How's everybody doing?
Good? That was brilliant. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice to hear. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Any takeaways that you guys want to share with the group or questions about anything that came up?
It's like amazing how like one or two things that you believe actually affect so many decisions that you make, and you don't even realize that they're like there all the time.
Yeah, such a great point. Oh, sorry, I thought someone else was jumping in there. I think that's one of the biggest things that sort of shaped as I was learning about this. Like, it's just, this idea that the beliefs, we're not aware of the beliefs, and yet they're having this huge impact on our lives and who we are and the choices we make. And so, we have to be practiced kind of dragging them up into our conscious awareness so that we can, get rid of them if they're not working for us, or shape them into something that's going to help us. Yeah.
I guess it also shows the importance of people when they're younger. So people's comments and actions when they're adults, when they're dealing with kids, they might not think it has an impact, but it actually does, which I think is important, because for me personally, I'm going to go into coaching kids age between 5 and 10 tennis. So that's something that needs to be mindful of, is that you need to remember that your actions and your words can have an impact somebody's life 20-30 years down the road. But I think also, I think we also forget that famous and successful people also have this inner dialogue that you're mentioning. So we just see them on the pedestal, thinking they don't have any self-doubt and confidence problems, but we don't see what they've gone through to reach that point and what follows once they've reached that point. So I think that's important as well, and interesting that everyone at some stage has, even through one day, has the two minds going back and forth, being mindful of it and controlling it, I guess. So yeah, it was great. Thank you so much.
No, you're so welcome, Andrew. Yeah, such great points. I think it's something that you can really definitely bring into your coaching. And there's actually so many resources out there for particularly coaching with a growth mindset perspective. So I'd encourage you to like go online and just like a quick Google search will pull up so many resources for you there, how to phrase questions, how to, how to shape the perspective on challenges. And I think you're right. I think the more we can apply this for children and teach them this growth mindset perspective early, I mean, geez, what a great thing to do for someone, so that they don't have to relearn it later in life, like so many of us do.
No, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks so much. Any other takeaways, guys? Anything you wanted to share with the group? You're doing pretty good. What do you think, Joe? What was your takeaway?
I'm just thinking to myself, when you mentioned, I was laughing because when I was growing up, although I'm like a short ass woman, I still believed I could be Michael Jordan. Yeah. So I was trying to at that point, and I've got a pair of his shoes sitting under my deck in my gym. But no, I think, you've not really, no one ever fails. It's just the point. You've only possibly reached failure if obviously your willingness to learn stops, and your willingness to carry on practicing. The amount of sports stars, obviously David Beckham, Michael Jordan, they don't stop. They'll never be beaten. And obviously, it's like doing the reps, which is a point that I've started to mention to everyone to become really consistent, or whether it's eating better food or setting a routine or making sure you drink water, all the simple stuff that comes along with health and fat loss. It's just about doing those reps. Like Michael Jordan would shoot 1,000 free throws a day. Like David Beckham would, bend his free kicks on a practice. You never foul until you stop. And obviously you just carry on learning. And so that was my biggest point that I wanted to mention.
Well, I mean, that comes to a great quote by Gary Player where he said, the more I practice, the luckier I get.
Yes.
And I think that ties into what you're saying, Joe, that, people see whatever, oh, wow, they just did that. Well, no, the gymnast practicing 7 hours a day doing that routine is not just showing up.
You never
and
see the
can do it, so I think that's...
Yeah. And I think that's one of the places our culture really, unfortunately, like promotes this fixed mindset, is that we talk about these successful people as if they were born with it, as if they just like walked into the world with all this talent and ability and success. And it's just not true. But that's the story we focus on. And, even like coming back to our example of Michael Jordan, like if you look back to the way he's talked about and referred to in the media, it's like the natural talent, always an amazing basketballer. But then if you look at the recent documentary that came out about him, like actually he wasn't even chosen for a few teams early on. Like he was overlooked, and he got so incensed about that he spent his entire summer practicing like 12 hours a day, and then he got chosen. Right? So like that's the part of the story that we don't always hear. But as you mentioned, Andrew, like it's there. People have the challenges, they have their internal struggle, their internal dialogue. It's just that our culture doesn't tend to focus in on that as much as I think we should. Yeah. Awesome. Any other thoughts or questions, guys, before we wrap up? Thank you so much. Anyone? It's been such a pleasure meeting you all, and thank you so much for sharing your perspectives and your stories and all of that. It really helps the workshop come to life, and so I really appreciate that. And it's just been a really wonderful way to spend my Saturday afternoon. So thank you.
Thanks for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anika, thanks everyone. I'll speak to you all very soon. Have a nice day.
Brilliant.
See you later.
Okay.
Take care. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
So funny seeing everybody like do the thing hand come up as they exit.
Amazing. That was the sort of numbers that I wanted.
Great.
Really, really, actually, I think a lot of people took from that quite a lot.
Great. Good to hear.
And I'll be excited just to see what they say come sort of, I don't know, not tomorrow because I don't really touch base with clients on Sunday, my day off, but I'll see what happens, not see what happens, but if I can try and, I want to fit, so when would you basically say that you would do like the follow-up session? How long, I remember you saying you normally give it within like a certain time span from today.
Yeah, I think like two weeks is kind of nice for a time frame. I think past 2 weeks it's a bit too long, but then the 2 weeks gives people a chance to like really sit with it and it all settle in and like kind of maybe give it a try, see what's working, what's not working. And then I find people tend to come back with some really rich questions and perspective.
So what I'll
to
do
kind of feed into the follow-up.
And then see what my diary's looking like.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was just saying, I'll get some feedback from everyone, obviously see how they feel within the next couple of days.
Perfect.
Up until, I don't know, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I'll look at my diary and then take a decision from there.
That sounds great. Yeah. And yeah, whatever option, of course, is great. Thanks so much for having me today. It was a pleasure to meet your team, and they were lovely.
All right, Anika.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Have a lovely
You
day.
betcha. Yeah, you too.
All right, cool. Take care.
Sounds good. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.